Hello, and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast on the internet that has the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That year is, of course, this season 1984, and we are trying to figure out of these 16 movies, what will move on to the bracket to be named number one. Tonight is a very special night because I think from the day I was born, I basically watched Citizen Kane, Seven Samurai, stuff like that. This is the movie that I've probably seen more times than all other movies that we've ever watched combined. Tonight we are doing Ghostbusters, and so I'm excited but scared. I'm laughing, but I'm nervous, and there's like different genres going on inside of me. Movie of the Year is, as always, a game show. I have panelists here that will be competing for points. You get points for great points that are made about the movie. If you say something that I've never heard before, that's like a point. If you say something that I have heard before, 2 points, we'll say. I do like when like stuff is reaffirmed that I already know. Our first panelist are my best friend, my current best friend, because he won last week. It's Mike is here.
Hello, so glad to be back, and I definitely remember that I won last week.
It was a surprise to all of us, buddy, and it was so surprising to you that you deleted it from your brain.
Yeah. This is going to be the LA Confidential Jackie Brown of this season, is all of us always forgetting that I won Once Upon a Time in America.
Reference everybody knows. Our next panelist, our challenger, is Greg.
Hey, I'm here. I came in last place last week because I'm nice to our guests, Ryan. I think it would be rude to beat them, especially by 1 point.
Yeah,
that's like hey, thanks for coming out. We really appreciate it. And but then to beat you by 1 point, that's not for me. No, so I lost by a few points, Ryan.
Well, yeah, but you gained points in integrity.
Yes,
in dignity.
Yeah, I got to up my integrity stat, my dignity stat, and so that's pretty good.
Everything has to go back to D&D?
My proficiency bonus went up.
Oh, I interrupted. Wait, I should have said
Sorry, I didn't realize you were going to be making fun of me for that.
And we also have another person here that Greg has to be nice to, and Mike's going to try and trample. Our guest tonight is one Conor Kilpatrick, one of the iFanboys from the hit long-running, I'm going to say longest-running comic book podcast because that's what it says in the notes that I typed down. Conor, how are you?
I'm great. We're not the longest, but we're close. We're one of those original 5 or 6 shows from 2005, but there was a couple that started like a few months before us, but thank you. I'll take it.
Original 6, like hockey. That's how hockey works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You guys are the Penguins. Conor, you do a comic book podcast where you talk only about comic books. Was watching Ghostbusters this week, was that the first time you've ever seen a movie?
Yeah. I didn't even know how to play it. I had a disc. I just tried to put it in the TV, and nothing happened. It broke.
Oh, man. Let's go back to our childhoods. Is this a hard movie to sort of divide from that? And where are we right now? Conor, I'll go back to you. Like, is Ghostbusters still as good as it was when you were a kid?
Yes. You said at the beginning that you'd watch this movie more than any other, and that also might be the case for me. I was born in the late 70s. I was 7 when this movie came out. We saw it at the theaters. My mom took me and my younger brother way too early. It led to nightmares. But it was also one of the, if you were a kid in the 80s, you had like, unless you were wealthy, you had like 3 or 4 VHS movies, and that was about it because they cost $100. And so you watched those all. I probably watched this movie conservatively 200 times. In my life. So it's possible that I had a great time. I watched it twice in the last 24 hours, and I could watch it again when this is over. It's a great movie.
I let's go to you guys first before I weigh in. Greg, how about you? We have been joking about all season. We've been joking about like, well, Ghostbusters won't, that won't stand up to what we. What do you have to say about that?
First of all, I was so afraid of this movie as a kid, so I have a weird relationship with it over time. I liked it when I got to be like old enough to, and it's hard for me to even remember how scary it was because some of the things are just like almost like they're kind of like silly, but for when like added to a kid's imagination, were just a little bit shocking to me. But then I got into it when I was like in my teens. And then when the 2016 movie came out, the cultural conversation around that movie and around 1984 Ghostbusters kind of like, I didn't mean for it to, but it kind of like soured me on the 1984 Ghostbusters because I was like, why are all these people like, why do they talk about this movie like it is sanctified and like we can't reopen discussions about this, or that like, girls are in my movie now and I don't like it. So then I developed without meaning to, and I don't think this is valid necessarily, like because of an outspoken element of the fan base, I had that thing happen to me where I hardened my heart a little bit to the material. Then I put on the podcasting hat to watch it for this show, and that is always a different experience. I don't really anymore feel like I have an opinion about movies until we've watched it for the podcast,
Right.
Because of like how like locked in I am
And how tight that hat is. Like,
it is such a tight. Yeah, well, I got a big head, Ryan. So for me, a lot of hats tend to be tight. Even big like salad bowls tend to be tight on the old Greg noggin. I've never liked this movie as much as I like it now.
I thought you were just gonna pause.
like-
I've never liked this
Never.
movie. Is what I realized.
Yeah. The craftsmanship of this movie, like the way it walks you through, here's what's happening now in the Ghostbusters movie. Like you could be so dumb, which hand in the air I am. And this movie's like, you can like say what the topic of every single scene is in just a couple of words, and it walks you through the creation of and the like popularizing of the Ghostbusters in universe. And the music is perfect. It's funnier than I remember. I watched it 3 times, and every single time it was like still fresh and exciting, as if I were like 10 or something like that. I mean, I really did feel like I was in contact with little Greg while I was watching this.
that means such a leader. Mike, what did you think of it this time? If we need somebody to be a hater, is it going to be you?
Sure,
Usually I
if
am a
somebody
hater.
has
Sorry,
to.
everybody.
I'll before this week, I'll say mine. This and the second one I rented a billion times. There's certain movies that I loved and for whatever reason never bought or was given.
Yeah.
I just kept going to Blockbuster to rent the same fucking movies. And Ghostbusters. I had the Proton Pack. I had the Trap as a kid. As an 18-year-old, I made my own Proton Pack out of trash and was garbage version of Egon Spengler. But I think very similar, Greg, where it was the anti-fans of 2016. Because if one thing I remember about Ghostbusters, and it really was solidified rewatching, is it's about reverence. Everything is very serious, and you should take it's very holy, and that's how the Ghostbusters are in universe and out of universe. So you should take it very seriously. I still think so. This was an enjoyable week. I still think the 2016 might be funnier. There might be more actual jokes in it. The second one, though, I got 25 minutes in this week. I was like, I'm going to watch them all. And I got a half an hour into that one and went, nah, I'm good. I don't know if I need that one. But I'll be the hater with my milk toasty of I'm not in love with it as hard as you guys are.
It's 3.5 stars, not 4 stars.
Exactly.
You son of a bitch.
Yeah, I'm going to, I'll give Connor and Greg a point for agreeing with me. I could not believe how enamored I was with this entire experience. Because, like, we had talked it up all season about this is going to be a bummer. This is going to be women playing Ghostbusters, that can't ruin our childhood. Only our childhood can ruin it. And I thought that it was going to suck, but I could not believe how well written and well made. And I think that we do have to get into the editing at some point, because there were thousands of hours left on the cutting room floor because everybody's improvising and shit. And the structure of the thing is, I think, fucking like, this is a great movie.
It's really tight and it's short. It's less than 2 hours. It conveys
God.
so much information in those 2 hours that modern movies can't seem to do. Like, it's like you get a ton of story in an hour 48 or whatever it is, and it's just incredible how tight it is.
And it's not like a boring expositional.
No,
they just slip it in there. Fuck, man, they don't make them like they used to.
They really don't. You said that they could teach this, but I would say, to not even let you finish, is lore building. Like, so much shitty exposition goes on today where it's like, well, we have to build a whole universe in 2 hours, so let's add an hour, and then they still suck at it. I know this world backwards and forwards.
Yeah, one thing I really like that they did is they made the main characters the experts. So there's never a part where they have to like go find a priest who then tells them about like what's going on. They just get to be like, oh, you know what this probably is? And that makes for such a better scene than them trying like to go over to Doctor Strange's house to hear about it.
Never go into Doctor Strange's house. It smells.
The new guy, the quote-unquote new guy, like that you would usually meet in the beginning of the movie, he comes in halfway through and they explain it to him. He's like, all right, like,
I need a job.
Shut
your nerd mouths up.
I'm looking for a job of money, please.
Okay, we have to dive into this movie. I want to pick it apart in a way that would break my younger self's brain. So when we come back, let's get into Ghostbusters. In the early 80s, Dan Aykroyd decided to turn his passion for spirits into a follow-up to the Blues Brothers, also starring John Belushi, and adding Eddie Murphy. After Belushi died, Harold Ramis, a.k.a. Egon Spengler, came in to rewrite the movie with the expressed focus of trimming the budget, along with taking out as much of Aykroyd's pseudoscience ghost bullshit jargon as possible. He did not get it all. The main idea that was kept from Aykroyd's version, a 1,000-foot-tall marshmallow man, because of course. Columbia got the budget down to $25 million, knowing that a comedy with special effects would be a flop. And flop it did, if you think today is opposite day. It was a smash hit, and over the last 40 years, it has spawned 4 sequels, multiple animated shows, including a cartoon without a gorilla, dozens of video games, and all of the other merchandise that came with a blockbuster movie post-Star Wars. The movie tells the story of 3 loser scientists who decide to start a ghost extermination company in order to avoid hitting rock bottom. Things go poorly, and then things go well, and then they have to save New York City. Halfway through the movie, the gang adds Winston Zeddemore, who was allegedly supposed to be played by Eddie Murphy, but was instead played by Ernie Hudson, whose role was greatly reduced from the original script when the filmmakers found out that Bill Murray was going to improvise constantly and take all of the good lines, and when they found out that Ernie Hudson was not Eddie Murphy. Taste buds, I ask you this. 1984 was proving to be the year of the genre bender, or maybe the year of genre movies attempting to be funny. We did the creature horror comedy already with Gremlins. Later in the season, we're doing the ultimate action comedy with Beverly Hills Cop. And here we have a mixture of ghost horror and comedy. What is the genre of Ghostbusters? Does it do one genre better than another? Or do movies like Ghostbusters prove arguing about which genre a movie is moot?
I would say blockbuster. That's the genre. It reminds me a lot of Gremlins. It seems to be based on having a couple cool sets. Some of the sets are, I can see where they tried to save some of the money, like Sigourney Weaver's apartment, with the window that's like, that's Central Park out there, trust us. But I think that, you have fun sets, like the altar set that's up at the top of the building. You have like a lot of fun action. You have cool special effects. And then you have enough humor to carry the day. This is funnier than I remembered this movie being. It's not focused on being a comedy, but it is still funny.
Yeah, I think that is important. And having, a way to trim money is one of your big montages. Don't show them catching any of the ghosts. Just have them run out of 24 buildings holding smoking traps. You'll see those ghosts at the end when we get our budget back. But it does. You're like, I see that they're growing bigger in the world. I can. We saw a Slimer, and now I can imagine them catching a dozen other Slimers.
But that's the great thing about that, right? It's like the Jaws problem, where your imagination is so much more interesting than seeing them over and over again trap a ghost in a montage of the trap closing, the trap closing, the trap closing, as opposed to their look like stolen shots from the streets of New York.
Oh yeah, there was some
people
guerrilla filmmaking in this movie for sure.
Right. I think every movie is like a multiple genres in some sense, right? So not every movie, but so many movies, especially that era. And I think we're going to talk about that much later, I think, in the show. But it's a comedy horror film. It may, Mike said earlier he thought the 2019 one was funnier. Maybe that's because that's more of a straight comedy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas this does actually delve into the horror aspects of it. It may not be as straight up horror as a straight up horror film, but there's scarier moments in this, especially in the third act and then the cold open.
The cold open petrified me. Like,
yeah, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
can't imagine what I did at 7. My brother at 4 watching that in the theater.
I will say the 2016 one, like, it is so loosey-goosey compared to this 1984 one, and that gives them the opportunity to be funnier. But also the 2016 one, you're like, man, why didn't you cut this? Like, so often you're like, I would have cut all of this.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. They ran long on everything. Part of what the glory of the 1984 movie is, it's just chugging along at such a good pace. I like how they didn't show any of the ghosts catching the ghosts in the montage, especially because it allowed there to be more time for wonderful Civil War era ghost blowjobs.
Okay.
That really did be the first. Yeah, it really did open up.
Well, and comedy or horror? What is that scene? Who can tell? I think it's a comedy when you think about Daniel. It's not Dan Aykroyd. Ray getting ghostly fellatio, but it's a horror when you realize it is a dream because he's not in a big old bed. He's actually in the little fireman cots, and he has that big old raging wet dream hard on next to his two friends in the middle of the night. That is horrific.
I'm going to ask for a new room after Ray keeps wet dreaming everywhere every night.
Also, Ray is like the one who's just like a big kid. You know, they're all but they're all essentially the same person taken to one extreme of that person's personality. Because they're all kids, but Ray is the one who is like totally still just a kid. And so you never see him evince any interest in women or sexuality, except for this one time where he's having this weird ghost blowjob dream. And obviously it was like very important to Dan Aykroyd, right? Like he couldn't let this part go. And so I feel like there's like a deep psychological reason why this scene exists.
Was it Civil War because
it happened to him?
Because he wore gray and she blue? Give myself a point for that one. I think that specifically with these two genres too, like comedy and horror, it's so much more often like I'm gonna put a counter, like I'm an umpire, and every time you make me laugh or scare me, I'm gonna click it. And if you don't do it this many times, then it's not a good movie.
Yeah,
that sucks, man. Like sometimes you just have this feel of horror or this feel of comedy. This movie is like the genre is Ghostbusters. They created its own thing because it's comedy and horror are easy to say, but like this Altman-esque moments in this movie where like it's a hangout movie for so long of it.
Also, I will say this about the humor. The first time you watch it, certain lines are like obviously humorous, and you're like, that's a good one. But when you watch this movie like a second, a third, a fourth time, you start getting to the point where you're like, actually, almost every line in this movie is very funny. It's just a more subtle, drier type of joke. But like watching Venkman go into the kitchen and look at all the eggs and be like, are these the eggs? Well, of course, I don't think it's like... And he's like, Bill Murray probably has 50 jokes like that are just like very deadpan, very subtle. And the more you watch the movie, the more I think accustomed to the rhythms of it you get, and you realize that in its own way, it is sneakily extremely funny.
And I think it's so important to have that character, not just have Bill Murray go nuts for the whole movie, but have, instead of the like, can you say that in English guy who's on the team, but have the guy who's like, he is Scully. He thinks nothing matters, even as he's singing. He's like, well, it's all still stupid. I guess fine, we caught a bunch of ghosts, but I still think ghosts are stupid, and so are you for believing in them. And having that attitude is such a different take on having the straight man when it comes to the paranormal be the comedian when it comes to the laughs per minute is such a fascinating choice.
I feel like Venkman is the guy that the blockheads who hate science and hate scientists picture their mind. Like he's like a con man scientist. He's not really, doesn't really believe anything he's doing. He's just trying to get laid the whole time. And but there's a point where it dawns on him this is real. There's a point in the open when they go down to the basement of the library where they turn the corner and their camera's on him, and his face changes because that's gone from being a joke to being, oh shit, there's a ghost there.
The bookcase falls.
And he has still a removed attitude, but he still has those moments where he realizes this is serious business. And like later on when he goes to Dana's apartment and she's possessed, like it's a whole different Venkman in that scene than the rest of the movie.
Not just lore building, but character building of like, this is how he deals with the world and trauma, is pushing it away. Right? And so you see a different version of him, but he's still making jokes, but you can see his eyes shifting and be like, okay, but how do I actually handle this now? This is somebody I care about and they are possessed. And there's a lot more depth to Venkman than I ever would have thought before.
Yeah, I totally think that, I think that Venkman is in-world funny, right? They're tired of his shit, but he's not, saying off punchlines. Like, he is in their world, he is saying these things, and everybody's annoyed by it. But I think that you can see in Dana's apartment where he is still saying these jokes to no audience. And I do think that the jokes get worse because of the situation. There's no audience, and also, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
So he'll say something a little bit more basic, like, you must have a lovely singing voice, which I think is below Venkman's comedy level. Like, it's a little hacky.
Yeah.
He doesn't have full power because he's freaking out.
A demon just spoke to him, so he's not at the top of his game.
In terms of it being scary, I was terrified of this movie as a kid. I was terrified of the librarian. I was terrified of something that's very effective in this movie is when there's ghosts on the other side of a door, the light that shines out from behind that door. Did you know that that's exactly what every door looks like if you are in a dark room and there's lights on the other side of the door? Because let me tell you, that's a discovery little Greg made, and I had probably no exaggeration, 8 years of being scared of the way doors looked when I was in a dark room.
So your mom is cooking dinner, and you're like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Yeah, exactly. Especially just making eggs, staple of dinner.
And the whole step to Sigourney getting possessed is terrifying. The face pushing through the door like a la Nightmare.
Oh, that
the
seems
arms
terrible.
popping
Terrifying.
out of the couch. Yeah, there's like scares. And even Slimer, who's been like mellowed out and softened because of Ecto Cooler and the cartoon, he is disgusting and like monstrous in this movie.
The way that you said that is he's been mellowed out because of his addiction to
The Ecto Cooler.
He drinks it like they're hot dogs.
Getting diabetes, he can't move as fast.
In that scene, Mike, also is like the arms that grab her. They got a real gropey, gross energy.
Oh, it's very sexual.
Yeah.
It's very sexual assault sort of. One of them grabs her breast, and the other one comes up between her legs, and it's very. Even as a kid, I remember feeling very like uncomfortable about all of these arms grabbing her in such a way, and then pulling her into this room and the door shutting. In a different movie, a different scene, it's a very different situation. It's a very visceral. Even now that I'm significantly older than 7, watching it in the last 48 hours, I was just like, oh, that's.
If I could,
really
Greg,
visceral.
I just want to do a Greg sidebar for just 1 second.
Wait, hold on. Do I have a drop for that?
I do have to say, I know it's acting. I know she's playing a role and everything. I feel like they could have been better with the way those hands grabbed onto her, and I feel like there's a realness to her struggle against some of the ways she's grabbed during that scene. Like, she's trying not to be grabbed on the boob, and one of them straight up grabs her on the boob, and I think even pulls her shirt down a little bit. And
a little bit, yeah.
I just have to say, for just this one moment in the movie, that made me uncomfortable. I agree totally, Connor. Like, that was not like the coolest part of the movie.
I've never heard these things about Ivan Reitman, unlike hundreds of other filmmakers who I have heard about. But can you see him going to some special effects guy who plays an arm and saying, "I want her to be really scared. I want her to feel like she's really."
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, and so that's like, that's where being uncomfortable with it. But I swear, that's the most party pooping. That's the most party pooping that I'm gonna do tonight.
Yeah, and then real quickly, I just want to hit on Venkman one more time. Could this lead? Like, I hate the whole like, you couldn't make this movie today, and typically it's because they already made that movie. But like, Venkman copyright. I mean, we're just gonna sue you if you copy and paste this movie.
Look what happened when they tried to make Ghostbusters in 2016.
But I mean, how often do you have a lead in a movie with this kind of budget that is like this, with so surface level rock hard, so like vulnerable on the inside? Like, is he the shell of the, or like the center of the movie, not just because he has the best lines, but also because of something else?
Yeah, because Egon and Ray and Winston aren't going through character arcs. They are who they are when we meet them, and who they are at the end, but proven right. And Venkman is like, and I would just like looking at the lineup. I don't know if, not having watched it this week, I'd be like, Bill Murray. I guess actually later in their careers, it actually is you can see why he's the one who ends up in Lost in Translation and playing more vulnerable characters, and they're all fucking goofballs. Because he always had that in him, even though people just remember him as the reason this movie's funny.
There he is. I feel like almost an energy to him that is manic at times, with his inability to like really show what he's going through. And it grows in relation to how upsetting and dramatic the moment is. And I found that on this viewing a lot more interesting, that like, he's not quipping just because he loves to quip. He's quipping because like, you can't look this stuff in the face and then just like be normal about it. You have to find some way to compartmentalize, and his is like this weird humor.
And it helps he has that look in his eyes. He has that hangdog look where there's something, you feel like there's something else going on there. He's not just funny. He's not Jim Carrey, or Robin Williams, although Robin Williams had the same thing, where, he's doing jokes about it. He's doing it because there's a pain back there, or as Mike said, he's doing it as a mechanism to protect his brain from the fact there are now ghosts in the world. But he has something more. I mean, not that Dan Aykroyd's a bad actor or that Harold Ramis is a bad actor. They're good actors, but there's a bit more in Venkman than the rest get to show, at least what they ended up putting together.
Tears of a Clown? Is this appropriate to say?
Well, one thing, I think we see Venkman move for. I think Venkman in the beginning of the movie has kind of given up, and part of that giving up is he's become like exclusively id centered. And I think what we see by
he's also never left college.
Yeah.
He's never had to do anything.
I think he's failure to launch. I think that's why he's depressed, because he never actually became anything. He didn't actually work very hard as a student. He did technically become a doctor, but then he doesn't flower in any other way after that.
And he's up science experiments.
Just
so stupid, and he gets the girl students.
Yeah, bang a student, right? But then
he works at a shitty university.
Well, it's Columbia.
Who does not respect the rights of its students. And then we see him like rise to a spiritual plane. You know, he cares. At first, when we see him to care about Dana, we think it's more of that id, and maybe it is. But we watch it actually develop into like an actual caring for her, and I think that's a pretty big arc for him.
We have to take a break and talk about something other than Ghostbusters. When we come back, music. That's right, you heard the music. It is time for Mount Rushmore. This week, we are doing the Mount Rushmore of 1984 musicians. Maybe they're not all musicians, they're stars. Who are the most iconic music-related people of 1984? I'm going to just pull the curtain back a little bit. I'm going to say that this might be the easiest bang, bang, bang to get 3 heads up, and it's the 4th one that will be the battle. I have picked who will get extra points for that if they agree with me. But we're going to...
I agree with you, Ryan.
Shit. Well, hold on. We're going to start with our guest, Connor. Connor, who is absolutely one of the 4 heads on this mountain?
Well, it's interesting you said it was easy, because I have 7 names on my paper here. And the one I'm going to say, for all the reasons that will become clear in a second, I don't feel great about saying, but in 1984, I mean, you have to put Michael Jackson on the Mount Rushmore. You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, Thriller came out in 82, but by 84, it was still a record everyone had and everyone was playing that was on.
I feel like there is a Thriller sound-alike in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like
a lot of sound-alikes.
That is not Thriller.
Yeah.
Mike. I'm going to collect a couple more before I decide, but come on. Mike, who you got?
A little film and album came out in 1984 from a wacky Minnesotan who, gosh darn it, was so good at guitar. Prince's Purple Rain came out, guys. It's Prince.
It's Prince.
It is Prince.
Prince is also very good. Greg, they're 2 for 2 on those big three.
Okay. Here is what I think, Ryan. I'm not sure that this is the person that you were thinking of, but I'm gonna go with it. 84 is the year Like a Virgin came out by Madonna, a superstar bigger than superstardom and still a working entertainer. Yes, all these years later. I don't think anybody can argue with the fact that she's currently working, but when it comes to records that put you on the mountain, Like a Virgin, come on now. It inspired Like a Surgeon, which of course is very important to everybody.
First paragraph of Madonna's eulogy, is that in there?
Yeah, inspired the hit song.
Okay, there might have been 4 here that are Slammy D's, and we might have to do a 5th because this is Ghostbusters, and usually we do a 5th.
Oh, of course.
Totally.
A Tully.
So we might be doing that. We've got 3. Connor, who's your next one?
Springsteen. 84 was the year Born in the USA. And
so I'm thinking for this one, it's got to be not his head, but his butt.
Yeah.
His ass. Yeah.
This is just a greatest hits album that was released to, like, as a normal record. Every song on this album is a banger. I'm going to move all 4 of these people onto the mountain right now.
Damn.
And we're going to do a little bit of a speed round for a 5th head.
Connor.
Let me give everybody
Mike.
their points.
Greg.
I'll take a point.
Yeah,
Connor.
why not? I mean, that was such a good decision.
Okay, this has never been done in the history of Mount Rushmore, the real one or the segment. But Mike, if you had to pick 1/5, dare me to drive?
Private Dancer came out in 1984. She already had, some acclaim, but making Tina Turner a cross-genre breakout star, What's Love Got to Do with It is the lead single from Private Dancer. And can you imagine Mountain without that palm tree of a haircut? I can't.
It's so great. As a kid, I just assumed that like Proud Mary came out, and then a couple weeks later, Private Dancer came out, right?
Right.
It's all old music. But watch that Tina Turner documentary that came out a couple years ago, and there was just decades of floundering and lack of fame, and incredible comeback. Greg, who should be the fifth?
Metallica came out with an album called Ride the Lightning in 1984. And if you are a Metallica fan, that is usually one of the top 1 or 2 albums.
Who's the head? Rob Halford?
I think it should be, James Hetfield. Because he's like the only one that people like in the band still. So
Not Lars.
Not Lars. No, because remember Lars? Remember the Napster thing, everybody? Wow. Let's go the Wayback Machine and talk about Lars Ulrich and his effect on Napster.
Hey, Connor, who do you think should be the fifth?
Well, I thought about Lionel Richie, who had 4 songs in the top 100. I thought about Cyndi Lauper, who came up on the scene in '84 with "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," but I think I got to put David Lee Roth's face to represent Van Halen, who had the album called 1984, which included Jump
that's pretty good.
and Hot for Teacher and Panama, and they were also everywhere in '84.
Your mountain is Michael Jackson, Prince, Madonna, Bruce Springsteen, and the fifth that would have got you so many points is David Byrne, but nobody gets those extra points.
It was my next one.
Oh, shit. Okay, Greg said it was his next one. So I would give him a ton of points.
Scout's honor.
Over the break. When we come back, let's get back to Ghostbusters. The idea that Walter Peck is actually the hero of the movie has become hacky at this point. As big of an internet cliche as Sid from Toy Story being right, The Shining acting as Kubrick's confession for faking the moon landing, or that Kevin Feige still has any idea what he's doing. But watching this movie, Peck is such a piece of shit that it's impossible to call him the good guy of anything. But Walter Peck might be at the center of what Ghostbusters is communicating to us about the 80s, its culture, and its politics. What do you guys think are some of the messages we're picking up from Ghostbusters?
I thought about this on the second viewing a lot, actually. It's almost like the idea that every political philosophy eventually becomes like its worst enemy, after a long enough time. And this is the end. This is the end of the boomer generation, who in the 60s is all about not trusting authority and not trusting anybody over 30. And so by the 80s, it becomes that the EPA is the bad guy because they're the government. Like that, think of all the agencies in the government that could be the bad guy of a film, and the EPA is the one that becomes. And that's like the ethos of the 60s, just hitting the wall in the 80s and exploding. And that's where everything sort of changes, where these guys are, so untrusting of authority that the EPA is the one that they're putting their target on, which I thought it's very funny in retrospect.
We have this award at the end of the year kind of called Shithead of the Year, or at the end of each season. And I think they might all the nominees might come from this movie. It starts with the guy at the library who doesn't trust them. And then there's the guy who runs the hotel. There's Walter Peck. There's the guy who kicks him off the college. This movie is filled with that elite upper crust bullshit asshole that's always coming down on you. And is this movie punk rock? Is this movie anti-authorian?
Yes, I think it's very punk rock, very libertarian, mixed together. Just let everybody do what they're gonna do. They're their own experts, man. And
they're their own experts.
I think you can see the through line of the stuff they worked on before, from early days of SNL through Blues Brothers, Meatballs, Stripes, Animal House. These guys fucking hate authority, and it does. I don't think they were realizing what they were saying when they're saying EPA sucks. Or that we'd be watching it 40 years later saying we really need the EPA to be stronger. It's the Killmonger rule of Walter Peck is such a piece of shit and fucks up so badly that even though he's mostly right, you're like, nah, fuck him. You are wrong.
Would you guys be surprised to know that when I played Ghostbusters as a kid, Mike dressed up as one, I had to dress up as Walter Peck in my...
So that's not surprising.
That's how I hung out.
To me, he feels like the manifestation of the Ronald Reagan line, the scariest thing here is I'm from the government and I'm here to help. It feels like...
On the other hand, they have a nuclear accelerator in Lower Manhattan that no one is,
I mean, that's hard to deny.
I found myself going, well, he's got a point.
But yeah, totally. Because I think that it's not that he is wrong. It's there should be a governing body that oversees what Ghostbusters types are doing. But what is what is wrong about him is that he is someone who is drawn to any position of any type of authority just so that he can be a huge dickhead. And so
it's ego-driven.
like,
He's ego-driven the entire time.
His ego spangler over there.
And so it has the unfortunate like resonance or rhyme with the idea of the government being a terrible organization. But I do think there is like anti-elite coding in this movie, and what I think is interesting about it is what you said, Ryan, which is it's not like that the rich people are the elites in this movie. And this is like a way in which I think that this movie is ahead of its time. It's anybody who acts better. And so like anybody who speaks in a refined manner, anybody who dresses at all fancy, anybody who works in the arts or works in academia. And it's like all these people are blowhards. And really what we should venerate in this society more is working stiffs who, yes, are knuckleheads and no, we are not always comfortable with what they do. But like these guys that are busting these ghosts are the same guys that are keeping our pipes in order, that are keeping the electricity working, that are actually getting shit done every day. And so as much as it's uncomfortable, that sort of like anti-elite messaging, it is true that these are the people who make our society work every single day.
Right. And okay, so this rewatch, I could not believe how it went to me, although I agree with everything you said, past libertarianism into just straight up conservatism. And that is because these academics are like, they're not just scientists that conservatives already hate, but like Conor said before, they're just college students that won't leave the fucking campus. And then to go out and, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and then make fun of the government or fight the government at all costs. Like, I maybe Mike's right, and this was all accident, and this is all just the lens of 2024 looking back at this movie, but there's some nuts messages going on here, I think.
I think it just harkens back to when we were talking about comedy and horror. This one of the specific strains of comedy that all these guys come from is snobs versus slobs, and they will always be slobs. But I think you get to a certain age and you're just fucking with a certain level, higher level of like we live in a society. We need certain rules, guys. I don't care that you think you're a slob.
Yeah,
it's all Animal House, but this is Animal House writ large.
Yes.
And I mean, look at the building that they buy. Only 3 bachelor shitty slobby guys would buy that building.
But one thing I did start wondering is like, are these guys cops? Like, are they first of all, are the Ghostbusters literally cops? They say about one point about the ghosts, like we are incarcerating them. Interesting choice of words. And then also like they're very cop coded. They get along with the cops really well.
They have a siren on their car.
Well, I think they're like labor like coded because they all have the coveralls. Like, I guess they're probably a step between like electricians and cops.
Like, or exterminators and cops.
Exterminators and cops. But like, I don't know. I can't see them taking an innocent ghost and shooting them unarmed.
Or standing on its neck for 8 minutes. Like that scene's not here.
Well, that's left on the cutting room floor.
The other sort of like political messaging in this that I was focusing on was, we've been looking at like 1984, like how is it for the ladies of 1984? And man, I felt bad for Sigourney Weaver. What are her romantic options in this?
Oh, I didn't mention that in the douchebag shithead list. Is her boyfriend or whatever, the violin player?
That guy sucks dick.
That guy sucks ass.
Rick Moranis? Like, honestly, Rick Moranis is so whiny and terrible and good guy-ish and just like, yeah, give me a chance. Like, it's like a little kid that she has to like fend off every time she walks past his apartment, and it makes me feel exhausted for her. Like that he has a preternatural sense of when she's in the building, and he runs up to her and he's like, I'd really like you to come to my party. Like, as if he's allowed to say, like, that's what I want you to do.
Conor, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, he does seem to have. Was the blonde woman at the party his girlfriend? I couldn't,
It seems like she wants to be, right?
Right.
I thought I think he invites her to the party to make Dana jealous, and because of that, the girl he's inviting just to make somebody else jealous, she weirdly gets kind of like, well, now I'm kind of like a little bit into you because if you're just inviting me here to be mean to me, then that's like, you must have something there. And so then she ends up like kind of being into his stuff. But then when he's like paying too much attention to Dana, she's like, I'm going to leave until he agrees to dance.
Well, the other question is, and this has stumped me for 40 years, is does she die? Does she fall out the window and die? Or does she fall into like a ledge?
Well, okay, I don't know the answer to that, but I think probably yes. My question is, whatever happens to the library ghost? Because they just run away from that. Do they circle back around and go bust that ghost? Or
some say still haunting New York Central Library to this day.
She's too scurry. This one we can't do. Sorry.
That one, like that chubby looking one that eats hot dogs, we'll fight that ghost.
Yeah,
that one was legit scary. Also, Slimer's gonna get gout if he keeps up this diet.
Yeah, man, I gotta say, like, you can lose the weight, but like you've already done the damage. I didn't big for that long.
We have to have limits on hot dogs per week.
Yeah,
and no hot dog bowls.
It does make you wonder though, because they kept saying that, at least everything I read, that they would call it the Belushi ghost, and so like was that some that residual like anger at Belushi for his lifestyle?
Conor. Holy cow! That guy snorted 75 hot dogs a night.
I'm letting you guys right now, if one of you dies in a way that bothers me, I'm going to write such a screed of a film.
Yeah, dude.
This is the only segment that I think that I could ask you guys this question. Mike, you've lived in New York. Conor, you've lived in New York. Greg, you have a bunch of family in New York.
From there. I was born there.
Conor was born there. Greg, you've been there a bunch, right, to visit family?
We would spend a couple months there over the summers in like the mid to late 80s.
And
this was my neighborhood.
This particular movie was?
This is where I grew up.
I've never been because I fear the smell of piss. But so I wanted to ask the three of you, is this an underrated New York movie? Like, should this be in the top 3 New York movies of all time?
Interesting. I think it's definitely an aspect of New York. And for this era of New York, yes, of how grimy and dirty and dangerous everybody thinks it is. It certainly doesn't, I think, capture modern day Disneyland New York,
but also the area, the neighborhood that it's mostly set in was not a very dangerous neighborhood at the time. Even
well, there's ghosts, bro.
Besides the ghosts, I mean, okay. Obviously the ghosts.
Conor,
the neighborhood that their headquarters is in was a bad neighborhood, but
like the building is like
New York
Central Park, right?
Yeah,
right. The city isn't so much a character as it is a presence, and it's full of New York characters, from the cops to the mayor to the cardinal, and the way it suddenly portrays the power dynamic in the mayor's office at the end. New York is a place full of characters that are utilized in the film, but it's not so much.
And
we don't spend a lot of time talking about New York or exploring New York, but it's always just a backdrop.
I
can say that at the time. We sort of considered it a New York movie, right? Because it's like it's in that it just felt like very New Yorky.
I feel like everybody in this movie has
felt very New Yorky.
Yeah, I feel like everybody in this movie who has 3 lines or less is New York as fuck, and not in a overdone way.
Because they just grabbed random New Yorkers. And the second one deals with New York even more head on,
right?
Where it is what's fueling the bad guy is the rage and piss and vinegar of New Yorkers.
For me, it feels like I'm the last person to be an expert on this, but I have to say, for me, it feels New York is shit because this is the times I went to New York. And so for me, like, there is more of an 80s New York than any other New York because that's when I was there a lot. And I think the thing where you run out onto the streets of New York and just film something while you're out there, while New Yorkers kind of like walk around it and then maybe like give half of one look as you're like carrying this steaming thing down the street. I just like that. To me, that reminds me so much of not just my actual childhood in New York, but like the movies of the time. That's always how New York is depicted. Like people not giving a shit about because they've got to like walk as quickly as they can to their next location.
One last question, and then we got to go. Are the sewers steaming in New York all the time because the Ghostbusters would put the traps in the sewers?
Yeah, it's residual ghost residue.
I think it's because there's stew down there. They don't want you to know it, but there's delicious stew down there.
And yet just it doesn't cover up the smell of piss. Stew's so good, you'll scoop with your hand. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to cover the entire career of one Billiam Murray. That's right. it's career retrospective time. And instead of just taking a leisurely look through our actor's career tonight, we have to bracket it up because that's how we do everything. Gentlemen, you are going to vote on what is the most iconic, most Murrayest role of Bill Murray's career. And there can only be one. Could it be tonight's featured role? Or will it be something else? I had to put 16 on this. Usually we do 8, so I'm going to move a little bit faster than I normally do. I apologize, but pretty iconic person in my life. Your first seed is Peter Venkman. Let's be real.
Yeah, let's be real.
I vote that one. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Your 16th seed is Larry Darrell from The Razor's Edge. Has anyone seen The Razor's Edge or can tell me anything about it?
It was the finishing move of Razor Ramon. WWF and WWE superstar
Razor Ramon. This is where Bill Murray, it's his The Majestic featuring Jim Carrey. It's when this is like 83, 82.
I'm gonna drama it up, bitches.
Drama it up, and he's a World War I vet who travels from America to like Nepal and Tibet to bring some peace. Let's go to a vote, Greg.
Oh, I guess I'll go with Venkman.
Mike?
Dr. Razor.
Connor?
Venkman.
All right. Your number 8 seed is Steve Zissou, a titular character in, I would say, the worst Wes Anderson movie. Your number 9 seed is Bob Wiley in What About Bob? Who has affinity for either of these movies?
What About Bob is
What
terrific.
About Bob? Yeah, I'm Team Connor here.
What About Bob is an extremely effective film. Its goal is to create one of the most annoying characters of all time, and it totally does that. Like, it pulls that off.
And then, like, the genius casting of, well, who do we want to watch get pissed off and be happy about it? Richard Dreyfuss.
His whole family turns on him, Ryan.
It was the Captain Ron of our generation. Your number 4 seed, from Caddyshack, it's Carl Spackler. Your number 13 seed, this is a supporting role, is Jeff Slater from Tootsie, a movie that we've covered on this show.
He's so good in Tootsie.
Oh, man.
He is.
Oh, are we voting for iconic or favorite? Because I fucking hate Caddyshack.
We talk so much shit on Caddyshack, but I do think the Bill Murray part of Caddyshack is pretty good. I think that there's a way to say that part is like redeemable, and that character is funny.
It's just a series of short films plopped into a bad movie.
He's not the best part of Tootsie, although he's terrific, but he is the best part of Caddyshack.
Yes.
So therefore, I think Caddyshack should win.
Mike?
Yeah, and I'll lean iconography and say, Caddyshack.
All right. Carl Spackler moves on. Your number 5 seed is Bob Harris.
What about Bob 2?
Anybody know? Lost in Translation. I had no idea that was his name.
Oh, wow.
Versus...
Wow, the most innocuous name.
Yeah.
Versus your number 12 seed, and this is another one. I don't think I've ever seen this movie. Tripper Harrison, the camp counselor from Meatballs.
Oh, right.
I've heard
Anybody
of
seen Meatballs?
I've eaten their
I've seen
sandwiches.
Meatballs.
How well do you think Meatballs holds up today?
Not great. Yeah, probably.
How well?
But it was great when you were 12, hoping to see boobs. In the rental
Oh wait, are those the titular meatballs?
Titular. All right, let's vote. Greg, Lost in Translation or Meatballs?
Lost in Translation, Ryan.
Mike?
Yeah, that shit's lit. Lost in Translation.
All right. That's 2. Your number 2 seed is Phil Connors. Your number 15 seed is, did you guys know that Bill Murray played Hunter S. Thompson 20 years before Johnny Depp did in the movie called Where the Buffalo Roam?
Ah.
I did not know that.
Even if it was interesting, does it stand a chance here against Phil Connors from Groundhog Day?
No, come on.
No, not at all. There's probably only one man who could stand against Phil Connors from Groundhog Day.
Your number 7 seed is Frank Cross from Scrooged. And I'm going to stop right here and ask, is this one of the best movies of all time or dumb as hell? Because I think it's one of those
One of the
two.
best movies of all time.
It's so dark, though. It's the darkest Scrooge tale of all time. And that part of it, I feel like, weighs it down a little bit. But there are some good bits in it, for sure.
Your number 10 seed it's going up against is from Zombieland, from Space Jam, from a ton of movies, from Stealing Your Fries. It's Bill Murray.
Bill Murray from thechive.com.
From Your Cousin's Wedding.
I feel like there's been such a long history of these stories of him just like wandering up to people and saying things. I feel like for a while it was cute, and then it was too much, and now maybe it's kind of circled back around, and it's just like, wow, he's still doing it. That's adorable.
It was like we had the French fry stories, and then those got old, and then we had the groping on set stories, and that's sort of the arc of.
It's like, oh yeah,
I was reaching for French fries and I tripped and.
All right, let's do this. Connor, Frank Cross from Scrooge or Bill Murray?
Frank Cross for sure.
Mike?
Bill Murray as Bill Murray. What?
Yes.
Greg can vote, and then I want to tell one of my favorite Bill Murray stories.
Guess I'm gonna go with the guy from Scrooge.
Frank Cross. Go ahead, Mike.
One of the random Bill Murray being Bill Murray early in Nick Kroll's career, he saw him and said, "Hey, like at a bar, and there was going to be an open mic, and he said, "Hey, there's an open mic in the back. Come watch me do comedy." And Bill Murray, instead of saying "fuck off," he watched Nick Kroll do one of his first sets of stand-up comedy, and then said, "Yeah, that wasn't good."
You should think about getting good at that, brother.
Pulled a fry out of his ear and just left. No one will believe you. I don't think that this is a 2-horse race because your number 3 seed is Herman Bloom from Rushmore.
Oh yeah, Rushmore.
I think that revitalized the career.
Reminded the world of what he could do. Like now he's kind of like old and sad, and everyone was like, awesome.
But he'll still fucking spike a dodgeball out of a kid's hand.
Yes.
That's going up against your number 14 seed. And I think that I made the 16 seeds just so I can get this in here. Has anybody seen him play Grimm in a movie called Quick Change?
Yes. He directed it.
That's a fantastic movie.
It's a great movie. Underrated.
Never gets the play it deserves. Gina Davis and Randy Quaid.
Quaid.
Bank heist movie. He's dressed as a clown. Herman Bloom versus Grimm. Greg?
That Grimm, Ryan.
Quick Change?
That sounds right, yeah.
Mike, Rushmore or Quick
Rushmore.
Change? Connor?
Quick Change.
Oh my God, that's an upset.
You guys are bananas.
I forgot what the other one was.
Your number 6 seed is John Winger from Stripes. Your number 11 seed is Ernie McCracken from Kingpin. So, 2 different eras of Bill Murray comedy. What's hitting you first, Connor?
John Winger. I've just seen Stripes way more.
Stripes is the right answer, but Kingpin, very inviting. Extremely different than any of these other roles. You're basically always getting Bill Murray. Sometimes literally he's just being Bill Murray. But the Kingpin character is someone completely different.
Mike?
Yeah, it's
what do you want to
vote?
vote? Stripes. It doesn't matter.
Again, I forgot that the Rushmore. Yeah.
All right. Let's figure this out. Mike Venkman or Bob Wiley from What About Bob?
Oh, I mean, I love What About Bob, but come on, Venkman.
Connor?
Venkman.
All right. Greg, Carl Spackler from Caddyshack or Bob Harris from Lost in Translation?
The Lost in Translation guy.
Mike?
Yes, Bob Harris, the name we will never forget.
Connor, Phil Connors from Groundhog Day or Frank Cross from Scrooged?
Oh, shit. I mean, it's Phil Connors of those two.
Mike?
Phil? Yeah.
And then Greg, Grimm from Quick Change, one of your favorite movies of Batman, versus John Winger from Stripes.
I mean, I guess I got it. I chose Grimm, so I guess I'm going with him. This is my favorite movie.
The grimmest of fairy tales. Mike?
Not Grimm.
All right. Stripes and Connor deciding vote.
Oh. He's doing a really terrible New York accent in Quick Change. So, Stripes.
All right. We have our final 4. Connor, Venkman or Lost in Translation?
Venkman.
Mike?
Yeah, it's Venkman.
Okay. And then Greg, Phil Connors or Stripes?
Connors is the Caddyshack guy.
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day guy. That guy. Jesus Christ, I gotta pay more attention to what we're doing. Jesus Christ.
Why are you on?
You're not even on your
phone.
phone.
I don't know.
You just keep staring into the wall.
Names. I so
Greg has been trying to beat this Tetris level for so long. Mike, Phil Connors or Stripes?
Phil Connors.
All right, and so I guess we always would have ended up here. Connor Venkman versus Phil Connors.
It's funny this is happening because many, many years ago, one of my co-hosting podcast buddies and I were going to do a podcast about this very segment. We were going to searching for Bill Murray. We're going to try to decide which is his most iconic performance, which we didn't end up doing. But I would have said for years, I would have said Venkman, but I think Phil Connors. I think that's the most Bill Murray.
Mikey?
Yeah, I think he's a character here. Phil Connors is that perfect. So much Murray without calling himself Bill Murray. It's Phil.
Greg, are you going to throw down quick change, even though it's...
I would have
It could be grim.
I would have gone Venkman purely for recency bias.
Well, it's nice to admit your bias. That's it. Phil Connors from Groundhog Day is the Murrayest role of all time.
Do you think if we did that bracket, we would get the same answer again and again and again and again?
I think if we did it 100 times, I want to think that Bloom could win from Rushmore, but I don't know if that's actually true. I did realize something though watching this is that like so often his best roles are up against something that is not tangible. You know, like it's always him versus himself, but also like ghosts or time, you know, in Groundhog Day, or the girl, you know, the damsel or whoever that character is always there, but really he's focused on something else too that his patter, you know, has to go against. So Phil Connors, congratulations, you will get a point. When we come back to Ghostbusters. Before I ask the final question of the show, Greg had pointed out that Connor's first name is close to Phil Connors' last name, and he is the winner of the bracket. So Connor, you will get a point there.
Connor,
congratulations.
Excellent.
Thanks to your parents for that. Rewatching this movie 40 years on, does the legacy of it all make sense? What does the original get right that none of the follow-ups have been able to quite capture?
What doesn't it get right, Ryan? I mean, if you were just to make a rubric of how you could judge a movie, this would get high marks in so many different categories. I can't believe how musically competent this movie is. In all the different ways music can be used in a film, this movie samples of each of those and is perfect in its execution. Great. As we said earlier, the way it walks you through the story. The special effects, where they're not perfect, are like textured in a way that makes you like them. At least if you are like an 80s kid. There's like an authenticness to the effects.
Even when what's the dog's name?
Zool?
No. Her like gargoyle guardians.
That is Zool.
That's Zool?
Okay, fucking asshole.
Zool and Victor.
It's so hard. There's like a million people. There's Gozer, who is also a Gozerian. And then that person, Gozer, seems to just bring the Destructor.
And also Gozer's mom, who's like naming her kid. She's like, oh, well, we're Gozerians.
We're Gozerians, right? So Gozer.
When Zool jumps out of that closet and lands on that table at the party, that's the fucking 80s that I love.
Yeah,
but
so incredible.
That is so much better, and there's weight to it, more watchable, even though it's bad, than fucking Noodle Harry Potter on that fucking ogre. That will always be our holding up of the worst special effects in the world.
Mike, he's still shaking back and forth to this day.
The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man scene, like, I mean, you expect watching a movie that's 40 years old. Honestly, you expect to be like, okay, there's going to be some stuff in this where I just got to roll my eyes, and we used to think this looked cool. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man scene is far and away a better closing number than almost any movie will offer you currently. It looks so real and so authentic on so many levels.
It's weight. It's using models. And that's the stuff's gonna seem old, fine, whatever. But it was scary, just like the train fucking riding at the screen was scary. Like the people who roll their eyes at old effects, that bugs me. It was different back then. And also, we've talked a lot about the show. New effects aren't that great. People acting against tennis balls is nothing compared to this.
They have no weight to them.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
And mixing it with the foam effect of the melted, was very visceral. It worked really well. I think you have to give a lot of credit to the editors, David Blewett and Sheldon Kahn, because if the movie was as improv as they say it was, getting a tight, tangible, easy to follow story out of that must have been hell on earth. But they did.
Yes.
They cobbled together a tight, 140-esque story that you don't have a problem following. The lore, there's a lot of lore, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of Sumerians and Babylonians and it's crazy
Hittites.
architects, and
Connor.
they follow it. You follow it all. You have no problem with it, which is, I think, problems with later Ghostbusters is that you don't. It's not as the story doesn't go from A to B quite as easily as the original does.
There's a whole subplot here that reminds me of the people from Being John Malkovich. Remember that ending where they they were trying to leave the planet? There's a whole thing here that I probably didn't catch as a kid. We're like, no, this building was built in this way for a reason.
Yeah.
And shit, and it was...
That's so cool. That's sort of like H.P. Lovecraft, like sort of cosmic
It seems
horror.
plausible. Seems like it could be true.
Right?
Yeah,
For sure. Now it does. RFK Jr. is coming back to this building, or JFK Jr., but also the fact that I missed it as a kid.
Either way, it's scary.
Seriously.
Hide the backstory.
Because it didn't affect my watching as a kid. I was just going over my head. The legendary conversation between Ray and Winston in the car talking about religion and spirituality, I sort of dozed off. I was Dozer the Dozerian during that scene as a kid. But watching it now, I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting.
And I think one thing that we haven't touched upon, and maybe people who are younger than us listening to this don't quite understand how big of a movie this was. I mean, it made $300 million in 1984, which is nearly $900 million in today's money. I mean, if you can imagine releasing a horror comedy today and it makes $900 million, it would be the talk of the year of saving theater. This was a huge,
it's the Barb
huge
and
movie.
Oppenheimer of this time.
I feel like the movie, this is part of what's so interesting about the movie. The movie is aware of how popular it's going to be.
I know.
Part of towards the end of the movie, they in universe become celebrities, and it's like you're so jazzed by what's going on in the movie, and also we've lived in a world where Ghostbusters is one of the biggest movies of all time. But you just buy it. You're like, yeah, these are the coolest guys around.
I think it's early on. It's Venkman who says the franchise rights alone will make us richer than our wildest dreams. And so,
whoever had points in this movie did get richer beyond their wildest dreams. Yeah.
I think it is the irreverence we talked about. It's walking the balance between horror and comedy. It is a tight film. Everything that's come since, they fail in one or the other. And the new ones, just this nostalgia, remember our holy book of Ghostbusters.
Right.
Yeah.
I would rather somebody, instead of remaking and trying again of Ghostbusters, I'm going to say maybe the son of one of the guys behind it shouldn't be the one, because he's never going to have the right attitude towards it, because it's daddy worship. But if the Lonely Island did,
he's not the right man.
But
you should take away a point for that.
I wish we, instead of Ghostbusters 2 from these guys, I wish we'd gotten a Fish Called Wanda to Fierce Creatures. I wish we'd gotten an equal. This same group does a different fun, zany horror comedy.
I have to say, remember how when we watched E.T., part of what we said that what is so special about E.T. is they never did anything else in that universe ever again.
Right.
I hate to be this guy, because I know the sequels, they can't retroactively harm the original, but I really do wish there were no sequels at all. Even the one I like, even the 2016 one, I really wish it didn't exist. I wish the only place you could go for big Ghostbusters action was this one film, because it was enough. It was enough of a universe, and we could just barely peek around some of the corners and see, oh wow, it's even more expansive than can be contained within this movie, and that feeling is magical.
As long as we still get the delicious juice, Ecto Cooler, and I loved Extreme Ghostbusters and the real Ghostbusters.
Oh, I was gonna ask, has anybody
The cartoon,
seen Extreme Ghostbusters? Because I remember Real Ghostbusters, a title where they were like, "Hey, we have this other Ghostbusters thing, so you can't just call it that." And you were like, "All right, fine." The Real Ghostbusters.
Oh shit!
But we don't have the actor rights, right? So we have to make the characters look different.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more I agree with you about wishing it had just been a thing. We're living in that era, or at least we were, where they're remaking everything from the 80s and 90s that has any kind of name value. And for me, the hit rate of a successful one of these projects is 1% at this point. They're all kind of hollow and just sort of a really cynical activity. And so I find myself not needing more of anything.
Yeah.
I don't need more than 3 Die Hards. I don't need more than 3 Indiana Joneses. I don't need more than 1 Ghostbuster. I don't care. I don't need a Twin Peaks experiment in crazy. I don't need it. I'll have the one thing, and I'm cool with that.
I mean, do you guys? I mean, I think that's the crazy thing about this is Connor saying he doesn't need it, and I proved it with my wallet. I was such a Ghostbusters fan, and to not have seen either of these last two new movies, like, if you had told my 8-year-old self that, he would have slapped you in the face. He was a slap.
Well, yeah, I mean, we want something like every part of the movie Ghostbusters feels fresh and original, and it feels like even if it's just a fresh, original recombination of things that we have had before, it found a way to put those things together in a way that was appealing to us. And so that's what we want to have recaptured. Instead, what they try to do is they hit all the same beats but lack the soul of it. There is like grain and tooth to this movie. There is soul. There is depth to it. And part of it is things that don't look perfect or work perfectly. Lines that are said like not optimally but still humorously. And that is what we love about it. You can't just say like, now we're going to do that again. Like, you have to try to make another thing that's original and then hope that the spirit pours into it in the same way that it did for this movie.
I think it's such another important point, too. And you guys have been, like, talking about this the whole time, about this movie as opposed to 2016 and then the last two. And we barely talked about Ghostbusters, too. Like, that's not a thing to us. Is that these guys are blue-collar, white-collar New Yorkers who are making cracks, just like one-liners, but in this very real world. And when you get to these other movies, it's so, reverential to the past, but also like even in the 2016 one, it's so comedy. Like, like we're gonna bit, and like there's a lot of not subtle actors in that movie, and like before it was just like three dudes kicking back. I shouldn't say dudes. Three people kicking back and just cracking wise about the thing that was going on up there. That's what was.
And
they
need to raise the stakes on the spectacle, and it becomes more of an unreal world. It's like, how does this world exist in the same world that Ghostbusters did? Doesn't feel like it could.
Right.
Because they're supposed to still, at the end of the day, feel like exterminators. Right. The genius, and I'm sorry, I apologize. The genius of the question, who you gonna call? Which really is like, who else are you going to call? There's not people who come out to fight ghosts. We're the only ones who do it. And so even though, like, we kind of suck at it, we're like, by the way, don't cross the streams or we all die. What else? Let's see. Like, one of the things we have to go over, like, we should have tested this. Yeah, you're right. We should have. Because, like, this is who you got. It's these dudes.
You can also see Bankman when he's talking to the hotel manager. He's like, well, how much am I going to owe you? And he's like, $5,000? I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you know what? I never noticed that in my entire life of watching the movie. I noticed it yesterday because your eyes are on Bankman the whole time. But I looked over at Spengler, and he's signaling him with his fingers how much to charge. And I, in 47 years, had never seen that before. Where he does this for $4, and then he does one finger to his nose for the $1,000 extra charge.
And I'd
never seen that before.
I think
it was $4 for $4,000, and then one bag of cocaine.
I think that's really important, though. Because if you just are paying attention to Bankman, which you are totally invited to do by the framing of the shot, and that he's the one who's speaking, you miss the fact that it comes from Egon. Bankman might be ripping the guy off. But knowing it comes from Egon, you know that actually what it is their overlay on this thing is incredible. Their margins are razor thin. And that's important because we see a couple scenes later that, yes, they are very busy, but what they're really busy on is having to go back to the same places and do the jobs over again for free, basically, because they have return customers who, if you're an exterminator, you have to go back if a mouse comes back, right?
You always get one mouse alive.
They're doing that. Yeah, but you don't want to do that because you don't want to have to go back because you have to go back for free. And they are doing that. And so it helps us to realize that even if we see them as being busy, they're not making a ton of money.
Also, even though it's 1980s money, I would have said $250,000.
I just took a ghost out of your building.
Yeah, we took a ghost out of your building.
Who's eating all of your hot dogs?
Speed round.
It is time for speed round. Here we go. What's the body count of this movie? As in, how many people die?
Yeah, we used to not give a shit.
People are staring up, and there's big chunks of cement falling on people. I think we see I'd say 300 people die in this movie.
I never remembered until the Superman movie when he basically just fights General Zod in the middle of the city and they use like people as weapons against each other. I never heard anybody say like, hey, how many civilians are dying in this fake world? Back in 1984, dude, a bunch of people got fucking crushed. They almost vaporized that maid. They don't give a shit. Do you know how cheap life was in 1984, dude? We did not give a shit. We had just barely convinced the country to put seatbelts in cars, and people fought it fucking tooth and nail.
Oh, yeah. You think
Life
anti-vaxxers? Do you guys remember in the 60s, those anti-seatbelters? What's the body count of this movie, as in how many people fucked a Ghostbuster, or a ghost, rather?
Wait, do Rick Moranis and
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay, they do. Okay, just to confirm that, they do. Okay.
But he does not remember.
Oh, man, that is so sad.
Is William Atherton's character, Walter Peck of the dreaded EVA, a lock for biggest shithead of the season?
Yeah, I think we ought to call it the Atherton, honestly. Honestly, like,
It's Die Hard too, right?
Yeah.
yeah, he has made
And
a career.
real genius.
And he's really like enjoying himself in this role, and the way he delivers lines. They're using nerve gases and hallucinatory agents. Like, the way he speaks, he's having so much fun. He's really doing a great job.
Speaking about being typecast in the 80s, did you see who was at the prison? The cop outside of the prison?
Reginald Vell Johnson.
Reginald Vell Johnson. Be a different character.
That's not because of a paucity of roles for men of color who are also that size and that age, do you think, Ryan?
That corner's over, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I promise.
Special effects aside, how do the tensions and scares hit? We already went over that. Does this movie reveal that we already went over that? We can all agree that Ray officially, let's close the book on this, did not get a blowjob from a ghost. It was a dream, yes?
It was a dream.
It's all a
It's just a
dream.
dream. Also, I think based on what you see in the dream, like, it's that kind of dream thing where you think it's going to happen, but then you wake up really before it does. Like, you're sure it's going to happen.
worst.
But your brain is just like, oh, you don't deserve this. And so you just wake up.
And you can't go back
You
into
try
it.
to fall back asleep, and now you're like getting chased by cereal.
Why?
I tried to go back to sleep as fast as I could. What would be awesome is that if he was getting a blowjob by, like, a pretty hot Civil War ghost,
Yeah.
and then he woke up and it was just Slimer all over his neck. That is the end of Speed Round. When we come back, we're going to give this movie awards and determine who is the best watcher of Ghostbusters. It is time for awards. This movie was nominated for 2 awards, Academy Awards, Best Song, and Special Effects. Lost both of them. Both to Huey Lewis and the News. They got both Oscars because of the lawsuit. We're going to give it a ton of awards right now. But before we do that, let's start with recommendations, lest I forget. Greg, if you're just watch Ghostbusters and, like, you're in the mood for something else, what do you want to watch?
I want to bring peace to the land, Ryan. We need the fans of Ghostbusters 1984 and Ghostbusters 2016 need to join hands and love one another. There's no reason to prefer one movie over the other. Oh, no, probably you should prefer the 1984 one. It's a better movie. The funnier movie is the 2016 ladies Ghostbusters. Apparently, Bustin also feels good for ladies, which was not something
That's
we
a
knew
myth.
in the 80s. Yeah, and back in the 80s, we were like, "Are you sure?"
I've heard they can bust more than one time in a night, too.
Do you remember?
It's a myth.
I feel like when we were growing up, it was like there were a lot of jokes about, like, finding the clitoris. What do you mean finding? It's on the front page. It's right there. Like, what do you mean? The G
You have to get past it.
That's in there. The G spot is in there. So, like, obviously, you gotta, like, but, like, it's a very apparent structure on the whole. Anyway, the 2016 Ghostbusters is a lot of fun, and I think that it of all the sequels, it's the one that captures the essence, and I have also seen.
Walter Peck says that that Ghostbusters movie should never have been made, and it ruined my childhood. Louis Tully says that one is funnier than this one. That's how I...
Yeah, that's the
Two types of dude. Mike, what do you want to recommend?
Before he made bloated, giant Hollywood blockbusters, Peter Jackson was a schlock director, and a movie I fucking loved as a kid and really captures the spirit of Ghostbusters is Michael J. Fox's The Frighteners. It's so
Mike,
good.
you
And
like
it
it?
also
Mike.
comedy and horror blended hard.
What a fantastic movie that nobody ever talks about anymore. Like, this was his last movie before he went to New Zealand with hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's crazy.
But yeah, it's such a good movie. Connor, what do you got?
I have 1983's Trading Places for several reasons. One, you get to see Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy together, which you didn't get to see in Ghostbusters, which was the plan. Two, you get to wonder what the hell happened to Dan Aykroyd between 83 and 84 because he seems to have changed completely. And three, it's part of the humor genre that still lived, that SNL influence that early SNL influence is totally different than the current SNL influence or any other era. Feels very much of the piece, but you get to see that sort of that camaraderie that you wouldn't otherwise from Eddie and Dan Aykroyd.
All right, so we have Trading Places, we have The Frighteners, and we have Ghostbusters 2016. Mike, you obviously take that one down. I'm gonna give you an extra point right now. Let's go to 84 fit, outfit, style, hairdo. Connor, what was the most 80s thing you saw here?
You know, it's not a crazy 80s fashion movie. Most people are just kind of wearing regular clothing. But for me, there was really only two instances, and the one I really just picked on was Gozer. It was the flat top. It was the spangly, sparkly outfit. She looks like Brigitte Nielsen. That was the one that I think of as the most 80s look.
She literally looks like from beauty salons. Like they would have these.
Like the Duran Duran album cover.
Yeah, totally. And that's probably what she styled after. Like she looks like something out of 1984 style guide. It's very, very cool.
Mike, what do you got?
I'll do my honorable mention after Greg does his, just in case. But my actual one is, you know what? It looks normal at first, and the more you look at it, it's fucking insane. Is Louis Tully's party outfit is a mustard yellow turtleneck underneath a tucked in blue shiny stripes Oxford. What the fuck? It's so weird and it's so 80s.
And one of the most horrifying things about hosting a party is that everyone comes over, looks at you, and says, "That was the best you have to offer." Everything else in your closet was denied for this.
That was Lewis's idea of hip.
Yes.
What do you got? What is this, River Run? Because we're talking Tully. For me, it has to be same character, but it's his velour jumpsuit that you first see him in. It's blue, but it's got like this orange stripe, and then he's also wearing purple and yellow sneakers. It is such a look, very strong, but I agree with Connor. There's not a ton here to work with. It's mostly just people wearing like overcoats.
There's a great side character, and this is like they're running out of the building. It's like right before it's the start of the third act, and there's cops there, and there's this punk chick, bright pink, huge head of hair, sunglasses at night with like a furry, shiny, sparkly blazer on. It's a killer outfit, but it's so small and it's so quick that that doesn't count.
I mean, Connor, what was your other one?
Oh, it was Dana's possessed dress.
Yeah,
that was the most 80s.
This is what we've been talking about. Is that like what do they call it? Athletic wear, the athleisure. Yeah, like it looks different then than now, but it was the same thing of just like everyone looks like they stepped out of a Jane Fonda workout video.
No, not the one where she gets grabbed by the dogs. The one where she opens the door to Venkman and she's wearing the
and it comes off the
dress.
shoulder, and you can see like her clavicle.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's the perviest anybody has ever said. Clavicle.
Gozer looks like she stepped out of a Jane Fonda video, so Connor gets that point. Next up is music moment, Greg.
Holy shit. Can you make the entire movie out of the music moment? Like, honestly, find a music cue and tell me that that's not the best music cue in the movie. And I will.
This is Elmer Bernstein, right?
Is it?
Yeah, she was just doing 80s comedies back then.
Yeah, but it's so strong. Yes. But here's what I'm going to go with. The moment when the EPA guy shuts down the thing and all the spirits are going into the city, there's like this really laid-back song, and I think it's just called Magic. And he's like, I believe in magic. And like the sun is setting over the city, and the effect of like all these ghosts coming out, and they're going all over the place, and then like the air pressure coming up out of the subway system, blowing all the garbage and stuff, which is like something that like kind of does happen anyway, but is like has always seemed spooky to me since then.
It's kind of the first time where music is backgrounded.
Yeah,
not foregrounded.
But like the vibe is perfect, and it tells the viewer like, okay, we are now entering into the third act. Here we go. It's like something from music, because it's almost like literally a bridge. There's been this really ordered series of scenes that are like verses. And then this is like a bridge that takes us into a completely different part of the song, which is like the final big bombastic act of the movie.
Mikey?
Watching it would have been like one of the first of many montages of the sirens are going and the song starts playing that we all know. But no, Greg called it that magic song is not talked about enough when people talk about Ghostbusters.
Hey, Connor.
So
Yes.
it's a great soundtrack.
Oh, hell yeah.
We all had it as kids. I've got it here now in vinyl.
On vinyl.
And there's tons and tons of great music on it, but I think we all picked the same one, Magic by Mick Miley. Mick Smiley, I'm sorry. For every reason Greg said, he took all my reasons, but basically it's the one I think of. You know, you think of cleaning up the town, and you think
Connor.
of the multiple uses of Ghostbusters itself, but the eeriness of that song and how and when the ghosts all come out and there's the wide shot of Manhattan and the ghosts are shooting all over the city, and that's when the music sort of rolls over. That's the one I tend to think of the most when I think of the music in the movie.
I gave you each a point, and then Connor an extra vinyl point. But
yes,
all of you are wrong. It's I think it's after Janine says we got one. It's
yes.
That is
another great one, dude. I mean, like the everything that happens musically in this movie is correct.
And Saving the Day is good too.
Yes,
when
dude.
They have that one.
Oh my god. The Ghostbusters at the very end of the movie, when like the credits are rolling and they're like going out through the crowd, like the coolest way a movie has ever ended.
Yeah.
And let's give this movie credit, because if it came out 1 year, maybe 2 years later, the ending credits would have had all three of them or all four of them rapping.
Yeah.
You have to sit through that. So that's awesome.
But also, movies stop making titular songs.
I know.
Right?
I love it.
They used to always have a song with the name of the movie in it, and it just doesn't happen.
This
anymore.
has like 3 songs with the name Ghostbusters. Like, there's a couple other songs about ghostbusting in this movie.
And then in 2, we get Bobby Brown doing a Ghostbuster song. The
right.
titular song for the Ninja Turtles movie is 7 minutes long, and it details every single.
Yeah, dude. Seriously, yeah. There's liner notes in the song.
We're gonna hold off on performance. Let's go to cringiest moment. Connor, what was the time where you were like, ooh?
I mean, Peter Venkman's HR file is probably 4 feet thick. But I mean, it's probably the opening scene with Jennifer.
Yeah.
And the test.
Sure.
I mean, he's only 34. It's not like he's 50 something, but it's still he's the professor. She's a student, and it's not great.
He definitely, like, there's that Cheers meme that's going around that shows the ages of the characters from Cheers. He looks 54.
Yeah.
Bill Murray looks from 25 to 55. His face doesn't change. He just looks old, or it just looks young.
The character smokes constantly. I think he's got the face.
Yeah.
I think he's got the correct face.
And it's indoors, too.
Yeah.
Mike, cringiest?
Mine is also Venkman. And also an HR issue, but a different kind. Janine very, I think, rightly says she needs a break, and Venkman just says she can quit. He's like, we can hire anybody we want, fucking leave. I know you were here since the beginning. I don't give a shit. And I know it's so minor, but it got to me for some reason, because he's like supposed to already be on his journey, and I'm like, fuck this guy. He's a terrible boss.
Dude, we haven't said a whole bunch about it, but this movie is like fundamentally about being a small business owner. It is about the highs and lows of owning your own business. And Venkman's whole thing is like, I'll fucking go to the mattresses over this because like our margins are just too thin. We're not making anything.
Or if you say the Bug Eyes thing, go back.
I'm sorry, Janine. Do we all agree that when he later jumps over the gate when Sigourney Weaver comes, that he comes very close to eating shit? That one of his feet catches but doesn't quite catch, but he almost just fucking completely ate shit.
He's the hero of the movie. Greg, what's the cringiest moment?
It's gotta be I just gotta be true to me, which is I hated the way those arms grabbed her. I don't like it. It just made me feel bad and weird.
I think, you know what I think makes me feel bad and weird is that when somebody takes 3 minutes to set up a point, like they're gonna have a whole speech about it and then win the point later during the awards. But Greg, you did it with the arms thing. You get that point for sure. Let's go to performance, Greg.
Yeah, there's like you always I always want to be like clever or something, but I spent my 3 viewings of this basically just looking at Bill Murray. And sometimes that's the wrong move because actually there's work going on in the scenes by everybody else. And so you should take time to check out what the other people are doing. Sigourney Weaver is doing a lot of good reacting.
Yeah, but if you're going to do Murray, why don't you do like a addendum with who you would have picked?
Secondarily, what's his name? Egon.
Harold Ramis.
Harold Ramis. He's doing more with less.
Underrated.
And I think that like when there's only one Venkman. Venkman's got the ball, and he's a ball-dominant character. But you have to find some way then as an actor and performer to give something else, to find some way to flesh out every single shot, every single scene. And that's what Ramis is doing constantly. And I don't think there's a lot of bad performances in this movie, but Harold Ramis is the one that is subtlest and therefore most value additive to me.
I think what's important with that, too, is that I don't know if we already talked about this, but when Ramis came on to rewrite the script with Aykroyd, Ramis was sort of known as the Murray Whisperer because they had worked together on Stripes, and like he knew how to write dialogue. Everybody thinks that it's all improvised, but like Ramis just knew the character of Murray so well, which also feeds into the fact that he probably knows how to react off of the character as well, you know? Mike, what do you got?
Not a small, subtle character, but I think from one, his prescient knowing that the nice guy is actually a dirtbag 30 years before society realized that, to his wild dog version. I think Rick Moranis' Louis Tully fucking steals every moment he's in. He is amazing.
And he is the reason for watching too, right? Other than that guy from Ally McBeal?
Yeah, I was going to say, I know I only watched a half an hour, but the peanut from Ally McBeal is great in Ghostbusters 2.
And that dancing baby from Ally McBeal that's in Ghostbusters that they try to kill, that's awesome. Connor, best performance.
I mean, Greg and I are on the same wavelength. It's obviously Bill Murray's Venkman, but if you make this award, who besides Peter Venkman? I'm looking at the cast, and it's actually a really tight cast too. It's not a huge cast, and everyone in the major cast is excellent. And I think Aykroyd's really funny, and I think Annie Potts is really funny, and she really, hits when she has a line. Ernie Hudson's very good in a thankless role for the most part, but I have to agree that Harold Ramis, he underplays everything. His character never smiles except for in the commercial, and he only sort of half smiles. Otherwise, he never smiles in the entire movie.
Because he's on camera. I
think about when he pokes the guy to see if he's real. He just plays everything so dry and understated. He gets little eyebrow raises to get a point across as opposed to a line. Like, he's very good in the movie. He's not known for being a great actor, but he's very good in this movie.
He knows how to talk to dullards, and that is to involve Twinkies. Like, that's the best way to get your point across. But that point is going to go to Mike for taking the Tully. We're going to take one last break, and when we come back, who won? And is it the Ghostbusters? I don't want anybody to complain about their loss here, so I did forget an award. Ivan Reitman is, I think, mostly known for keeping comedians on task as opposed to, like, his camera work. But I do want to do director's signature moment. So, Greg, we'll start with you. What was the Reitmaniest moment?
There's so many like big scenes that pop to mind when you think of this movie. But I'm gonna go for one that maybe you don't think of that much, which is them in that like city hall meeting. They're like meeting with the mayor. And Bishop of New York comes over, and at first he's like, "Your Eminence," and the mayor kisses his ring, but then it's like they're both just like a couple guys from the block, and then they talk to each other using their first names and everything. And by the end of that meeting, and then EPA guy comes in, and he's like, they're using light shows and hallucinogenic gases. But then the Ghostbusters are like, okay, we're going to kind of take command of this meeting. And the way in which they're understood competence is like seen by a respectable authority figure, which the mayor is the first one of these that I feel like that we've really seen.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's not like, he's New York,
Yeah.
But hello, get out of my life.
We see that he's another, lunch
He's a
spot.
street guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a guy from the corner, yeah. And I just think that, like, that moment of the universe being right because competence has ascended. Like, we are seeing a little mini meritocracy take place in that city hall. And I believe that Ivan Reitman believes very strongly that the average person has the wisdom to overcome structures of authority, or class divisions, and that competency can rise if we get the knuckleheads to just shut up and get the hell out of the room.
Dave, so the point is to prove that you're not knuckleheads. This was the scene that struck out to me the most this rewatch, even more than the Winston.
This is a scene for adults, right? Like, we love this movie as kids, but when you're watching it in your 40s, you pay way more attention to when things get quiet because you're like, well, what does this movie have to say? And there's these quiet scenes where I would literally, as a kid, probably get up and walk out of the room.
Oh, yeah. Like,
they're going to stand in a room and talk? Like, fuck that.
But, like, Connor mentioned the deacon, or what is he? The cardinal?
The cardinal.
Yeah, cardinal.
And he comes in, and he's like, well, on the record, I can't say anything about this because I make people not believe in religion, but off the record, I'm scared as fuck. And then the mayor is saying, like, I'm not going to do anything about this. And the Ghostbusters say, well, I think that it will get you points. Like, I think that people, they're not popular. And him being like,
you'll get votes.
You don't have. I love that. That line is so perfect. Imagine you have the opportunity to save he's to save millions of registered voters. That's so.
And then the cardinal nods at him.
Yes, yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like, you did it, my son. You did it.
Mike, beat that.
Wow, hard. I think other directors, modern directors, we talk a lot about how modern movies suck. They should go to an Ivan Reitman class of montages, because the two montages here we've already talked about it, because they do so much good work of getting us to point A, point B. Things are different in these characters' lives. So many modern montages are like, why you bought that song, so I guess you had to do a montage, because nothing fucking happened. It's not funny. The characters aren't growing. It's not interesting. And the tonal changes that these montages do is phenomenal.
Yeah, and we have all the magazines. Like, I don't know if we have like Johnny Carson, do we?
We first montage?
No,
Letterman, right? No, way before Letterman.
The first montage literally says to the audience, you don't want to see all this ghost busting, right? And we eat it up. We buy it. They don't show us the ghost busting for like 4 minutes, and we're like, yes, this is what we came to not see.
But it's our buddies getting famous.
Yeah.
That great one. Connor, what do you got for the right maniest moment?
I'm going to pick the scene right before Greg's, and when they're in the prison. That's probably the biggest expositional info dump we have.
Yeah.
But what Reitman does is he brings in comedic beats to offset it. And so they're giving us this long dump about Sumerian gods and the crazy architect and what it all means, but then they have the prisoners sort of hovering, and it's like, are you getting all this? Or, is everyone on the same page? Like, he balances the info dump with bits, so you're constantly entertained even if you're getting a lot of information. So it never feels like you're getting a lot of information. It feels like you're being entertained. And it's a nice balance. And that sort of speaks to the entire film, right? It's like there's a balance in this film between horror, info, comedy, that you never feel overwhelmed by any of it. It's all sort of seamlessly put together.
It's also how you can tell that they're in a jail and not a prison, because Venkman would not act like that if he was in a prison.
They're in holding.
Yeah.
It's funny because that bit kind of relies on the information being dumped there being interesting, and it is.
Right.
So you can see why the prisoners are all huddling around.
Right. They're like, wait.
Like, what's happening in the city right now? But again, I didn't give a shit when I was a kid.
Yeah.
There was other stuff for me to watch. Oh, man, you guys made such good arguments. I have to
Connor,
cop out and give everybody a point. And let me tally up real quick. Greg and Mike, 25 points each.
Ooh, wow.
Is that a good show?
No.
Have we ever had a tie for first? Do that.
25 is not that many. I guess now that we have we have 3 contestants, I guess that's okay. But usually you're thinking like 40 points, right, Mike?
Yeah, this feels low,
Yeah.
but I think still a good show. Producer Mike wants to say that was a great show, listeners. You enjoyed listening to it.
Of course. No, the listeners know that they enjoyed listening to that.
The best producer always comes on the podcast and tells the listeners how they felt about the show. And usually in a tie like this for first place, I would do some sort of trivia question or whatever. But you guys are tied for second place. Connor had 29 points here.
Oh, wow. You know, the way you announced that actually made it more stressful than it had to be. It might have been more forward to just say who won initially. Because when you said me and Mike tied, then you almost led us to believe. Mike, I don't know if you felt this way, but you almost led us to believe that we had won.
I'm going to ask you this for the last time. If you're going to come to the studio, you need to wear this headband because your sweat over whether you won or lost is getting out of control. But no, Connor is the winner. Connor, and I don't know if he knows the rules, is my best friend for the next week.
Congrats.
Sweet.
Congrats.
Let's grab a drink.
We will get together in, what's in between where we live? Bakersfield?
Bakersfield.
Let's go to Bakersfield.
Geography is amazing.
Listen to Corn.
Other than
Long Beach.
Do some math.
You'll get together in Long Beach.
Other than shithead of the year, right? What movie of the year Oscars do we think that this could win?
Music moment. It's going to be like the top 5 music moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any performances, any actors?
Duos. I think duos because there's 3 main Ghostbusters. It's so weird because there's like 4 Ghostbusters, but then there's 3 main Ghostbusters. But those 3 main Ghostbusters are really 2 pairs of 2 Ghostbusters, right? So I think the best duo is going to be those 2 different pairs of Ghostbusters.
Best duo, Weaver and Murray. I think especially the Dana Azul scene, they are fucking great.
That's true.
I also wanted to
And the scene where outside Lincoln Center where she, I think, realizes she kind of
Yeah.
likes him when he shows up. They have a great chemistry in that scene too.
and she looks back and he's doing that like weird heel kick
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Dancing, and then he spins around with the other dancer.
It's so redemptive that there's that scene where she comes out and you can see on her face that she clearly likes him, because then all his bullshit kind of like suddenly becomes cute, and that helps to make the movie so much more like enjoyable.
The problem is with Peter Venkman is the same thing with Han Solo, where so many people think that if I just act like them, eventually I'll get the girl.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not true. I want to shout out to everybody who's like that. You are not Bill Murray or Harrison.
You know what though? At least he's fucking like he comes to her and he says like, I am interested in you. I am pursuing you. Instead of this like Rick Moranis like, would you please come over
Yeah.
and be my girlfriend? Like, I'm like, that was so disgusting to watch.
Do you want to point?
And honestly, and we didn't even. I mean, like the fact that he had the chance. He's in a situation where she wants to have sex with him, but it's not her.
Right.
So he says, "I'm not getting involved in this." You
What a good
Which is
guy.
Where was that in Greg's corner?
In the 80s?
right? That's a bit, yeah.
Which is probably good.
And
because
would Lewis do the same thing? I don't know. you know?
yes. Oh wow, that's a whole other show. That's a whole other show. But now, honestly, now that like the distance we traveled on nice guy culture and like what it means to be a good guy and everything, very suspect.
Connor, as the winner, can you tell our listeners where they should go, what podcast they should listen to, because you're the winner?
From me,
Yes. No,
or just in general.
no, iFanboy, but talk about
Okay. Yeah, so I'm one of the hosts of iFanboys many podcasts we do. We've been podcasting since 2005. We have a weekly show called Pick of the Week in which we talk about the week's new comic book releases. We also do a monthly media splode where we talk about non-comics media, similar to what you guys talk about. We have interview shows we do every other month. We have book reviews we do every other month. We do, and then review the films that come out. We do a lot of stuff over at ifanboy.com where we have over almost 1,400 shows at this point in the feed that you can go and listen to and enjoy.
And the thing that I always say about iFanboy is that if you read comic books, it's a great show to listen to. If you quit reading comic books,
Yeah.
it's an even better show. Like, just get your update from all the comic books.
Just listen to people talk about the comic books. Save yourself a little bit of time.
Next week,
And a lot of money.
Yeah.
$4 a pop, guys. That's out of control. Next week, very important show for us. Greg is going to sit down and meet one of me and Mike's favorite people.
Oh my god.
Best friends, I'd say.
One of me and Mike's best friend. Like, it goes me and Mike, and then the person who played Julie Cooper on the OC, and then Greg, like,
Me, yeah, so low.
and we're going to talk about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Talk about movies that scared me when I was a kid.
So thank you so much to Connor, to Mike and Greg, of course, and as always, keep watching those movies.
I think we just have to admit that cocaine is very good for the creative process.